Welcome to the first episode of Jordan and Steve Talk About Fantasy High Junior Year. The naming convention is perfect. We're going to call it the Squeem Corner. I think we're going to call it the Squeem Corner. Squeem has not gotten a lot of credit over the multiple seasons set in Spire.
Yeah.
Like, people barely ever bring up his role in the Seven, which is wild to me. The only Dimension 20 character that's appeared in multiple different universes. But nonetheless, for those that don't know, right here, hey, I'm pointing the correct direction. We'll see if it's correct after the edit. Right beside me there, that'll be true either way, is the illustrious unofficial Dropout reporter, Jordan Brown. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discussing
Hello.
This season.
Delighted to be here.
Oh, we're both so delighted. And so what this is going to be is less like a recap of the episode, though certainly we'll be touching on a lot of things that happen. Plenty of spoilers. So if you haven't seen Fantasy High episode, or Fantasy High Junior Year episode 1, don't watch this first. That's wild. That's a wild choice. But it's mostly trying to contextualize it through like storytelling and like fiction creation and performance and stuff. Give a little bit of spin other than just because, I mean, we could talk for 30 minutes about how just amazing. I imagine if I combine TikToks that we could easily do 30 minutes on that, and you get to talk to a lot of people very directly in the crew on Dimension 20 and other shows on Dropout.
I started making my list last night during the adventuring party. Bren started naming names. I
knew
let's
it.
Go.
I knew you were going to be like, who have I not reached out to yet? Let's get this going. But first and foremost, and I want to talk about this because the internet is kind of wild about this. Starting in media res, as Brennan repeats a few times there, and for those that don't know,
he says media
res. Yeah, in media res,
which really threw me off because I did not know that's how it's pronounced. I still am not really sure.
Probably I'm probably wrong, but which is basically like in the middle of it. Essentially, it's in the thick of the action. And how did you feel about that intro as a choice for the third full-fledged main cast season of Fantasy High here?
I really enjoyed it. I know, it's a controversial decision. Apparently, I was surprised. I was surprised. I really loved it because, like, part of me was like, I don't want a whole season of them chasing. Shout out to how many HP I'm about to heal, but chasing the Night Yorb for like 20 episodes. That doesn't sound fun to me. And I also didn't want it to be like we defeated it off screen. Ha ha ha! It was all a joke. Like, this feels very like good to me. A nice balance of like, we're going to deal with the consequences that were silly and then fully a bit, which is also wild because like the Night Yorb thing was a bit. I can't believe people are shocked that the season started with a bit.
Right. Right.
It ended, sophomore year ended with a bit. Like, of course, junior year starts with one.
Well, I hearken this to, and it's not quite the same example, but I think why I was surprised that people were surprised. And this isn't a judgment to anyone who's like, oh, I prefer like a bit of a slower warm-up intro. I prefer a bit more story heavy to kind of get comfortable, get back in with that. To each their own preferences and how they consume media. But I was kind of surprised that there was even really a discussion about this, because this is like, this is the third season with these characters. So there's an implication that most people have at least watched Carlos Luna's beautifully narrated recaps, but probably watched the first two seasons, if not also the 7 and Pirates of Leviathan and all of the live things, because let's be honest, it's the Dimension 20 fandom. We have a problem, and we will rewatch the same actual play over and over again. But I was surprised about it because, like, to me, this was sort of like the opening to, say, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, or something where you just open with a big action sequence, right?
Yeah.
And who better to do that with than the bad kids or the crew of the worst, which also opened with an action sequence, right? To really kind of set a tone about like what the vibe of the season was. And I think the big sticking point is what we mentioned, which is, of course, at least this episode will be Squeem's Corner. I think most of it was, okay, we know who the Night Yorb is. We know that you're summarizing what happened over the summer. Who are all these NPCs? What is all this story that we didn't get to watch as an audience? And shout out to the Intrepid Heroes. They really sold the idea that they talked about this at all beforehand, instead of just...
You throw some like wild nonsense at professional improvisers, and they're gonna yes and so hard the audience is gonna be lost. Like
they're gonna be like, Big B? What? Yeah. Balthazar? Yeah. What? ECAF? What is this? Yeah. And then of course Squeem.
Yes.
But like. So I think that's actually more the sticking point. I don't think closing it up with starting with the end of the Night Yorb arc is the thing. Doesn't Brennan say something about how sophomore year started with the Crown of the Nightmare King, which is sort of how it ended like freshman year? So it's like
freshman year like launched immediately into sophomore year, and he didn't want to do literally and now we're like at the pool. The Night Yorb has burst from Riz's chest. Here we go. Like it's. He wanted to make a bit of a jump, and I think also narratively, which is the thing we're here to discuss, right? I think narratively it will be really interesting because they've now spent their entire summer break saving the world, and like in mid-battle they got a ping on their phones to be like, hey, by the way, your like school starts tomorrow. And I feel like that's going to be like a narrative point through the season of like, we just keep saving the world over and over again, and the next and literally all we have to do next is save the world again. Like we're just expected to keep doing this apparently forever. And I think it's a really interesting narrative choice to start it like this, to build that into the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's couched in the good push and pull too of the age. A lot of the preview clips talk about where their characters are now and everything like that, and that 16-year-old age where you can 16 to 17 where you can drive and have a job, and you're just shy of being an adult. And they talk, they see future things like the pressure of that time in high school. And so, yeah, I think it's gonna be a really good kickoff. It's one of the funniest opening episodes, just like outlandishly hilarious. I mean, obviously the opener was great, but like
instantly into that. Like I had described it on TikTok that it had the energy of sophomore year, but the competency of Starstruck. And like they know what they're doing now, and like they've got their spell cards ready to go. But oh boy, were they in a silly, goofy mood.
They were in a silly, goofy mood, and it was perfect. It was perfect. But yeah, great intro. Wild choices. When we come back after this commercial break, which is really just people who agreed to let me put their fan art in this break of the video, and or an advertisement that Jordan will find out if he watches this for his Patreon. It's one or the other. We'll be talking a little bit about the difference in storytelling structure that a third campaign in a seasonal structure rather than a long form campaign. We'll be coming back to that here in just a moment. So enjoy the beautiful fan art, or go subscribe to Jordan's Patreon. One or the other. Or both. You could do both, I suppose. In a world on fire, disasters and flooding threaten us at every turn. A grand storm and climate change may mean our end. History calls for a hero, but what man sits behind this mask? Jordon Brown, the unofficial NADPOD dropout reporter, friend of animals, a man not afraid to confront the hard truths, a man not afraid to stand up for what he believes in, and possibly a farmer. Jordon Brown, interviewer extraordinaire and unofficial dropout NADPOD reporter. Find out more at patreon.com/thejordanbrown. And we're back. God, I really think that one of the best values you can get online is going to patreon.com/the Jordon Brown and signing up for that. That's wild. Nonetheless, we're back. So this is the 40, I want to say it's like the 46th episode, if I'm counting my episodes right, which I'm certainly not, of the bad kids, and then another, like 13, 16 episodes between Pirates and the Seven. And so,
sounds
like,
right.
Yeah, in the Spire universe, but universe over 50 episodes, but like 46th episode of the Bad Kids. What do you think, Jordon? What do you think is the thing that makes this different from, say, like a 100 episode Critical Role, or even something like NADPOD seasons 1 and 3, right, where they're both in Bohemia, but with different. What do you think makes it a little bit different on this play?
Yeah, I think, I mean, one of the interesting things about, especially now that Worlds Beyond Number exists, we can see like Brennan's very slow play when he wants to. Like, he'll go wherever a character wants to go, like that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, the thing about Dimension 20 has always been that it moves at like a very quick clip of like, we've got 20 episodes to tell this story or whatever. And, you know, even though I'm sure people are already clamoring for senior year, that, you know, like, it's possible they'll never come back to these characters. So it's not like you know, NADPOD, we can spend 100 episodes like developing these things, and like it will be a big, beautiful arc from beginning to end. This is, we got 20 episodes, we got battle maps to hit. Like, we're in the thick of it. Like, we've got to get to these things. And I always find it so impressive with like Brennan's skill to still really lean into what the players want and improvise, while still making sure that, you know, I don't even remember how many people he said on the adventuring party. It's like 70 people or something now working on like production, right? Like that everything is met, you know, for the minis and the battle maps and the projections and like everything else that has to go into it. I always like, I mean, it's astonishing to me that he can smoothly hit those things.
Do you think when watching it, it definitely does, and I already compared it to one Marvel film, but it definitely does, even though it's a series, and it's definitely, you know, series length in the way that each season is at least like 40 hours or more, right? So it's definitely a series. I think it makes it more like doing a series of films, never knowing that you're going to get a sequel. So it's like every episode or every season of Fantasy High is A New Hope again, because they don't know that they're going to go the next year. And as much as we all would love to say, oh yeah, well now they have to do a senior year because they've done a junior year. No, they don't. They simply don't. Yeah, if they don't have an idea for it, they won't do it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But I think the difference for me with this, especially this season, and that I think people are most excited about, is that this will be the major opportunity to really get really feel like you're in a fully lived in world with fully lived in characters. And so I suspect this season is going to be about subverting where everyone assumed those characters, being like, these are not your bad kids from 4 years ago when sophomore year wrapped, right? These are your new bad kids. This is what happens with teenagers. This is why everyone gets sad at graduation of high school, right? Is because life must change and go on. I am very curious though, because they also have, well, since Fantasy High, the pacing, like you said, Brennan's got to get them to places, but the places, the pacing isn't the machine that freshman year was, right? Where it was like,
yeah, it's not
narrative,
story.
Yeah, exactly.
Battle. Story, battle.
Yeah. And so I'm really curious to see how they do with that. Certainly coming out the gate with miniatures and a 2-episode, like it looked like in the trailer, that probably wraps up pretty quickly, or at least they get a fair amount of episode probably outside of
it. It looks like they're back at school and the projections behind them.
Yeah, and everything. So it's not going to take up all of episode 2, but like that kind of bleed over, that kind of transition, is I think the play. So I'm really curious to see how that affects Brennan's room within the story, and I'm excited to see if any of the NPCs if they fully bottle all of the introduced characters from this first episode. If they fully bottle Squeem and Balthazar and them, and they're like, nope, they don't show up. They're not part of Elmville. Like, they have nothing to do with their life. It's like summer camp friends. You just don't see them in the school.
Yeah, I feel like Esaf, that's the mirror's name.
Esaf.
Right? I feel like Esaf's trouble, and it's going to stick around for a while with how hard Lou leaned into. I'm in love with my own reflection.
It was like, not the only one that will protect you. Not the only thing that will protect you. And the moment that happens, that's that Brennan-Lou connection of it's like the moment that happens, like, where does this go? Weird flirting. Excellent. Yep. Perfect. Here. And our third segment after the break, where I think on this break I can confidently say it's definitely going to be fan art to all the people that gave us permission to put their art on here. Fantastic. You can see all their information to where you can follow them on various social media platforms and everything on that. Please do. We love Dimension 20. We love all fan artists because they make the things that we love bigger by just being creative and masterful, right?
And a thing I absolutely cannot do.
I'm
so impressed with every person who can draw or sculpt.
I took
or
so
crochet.
many years of art classes to learn that I am never going to do it. And so right after that we'll be back with some wild speculation. Jordan.
Yes.
You've been known to theorize, to postulate, perhaps, I believe the word is speculate. Yeah. You've been known to speculate, maybe decide if a gold mine is somewhere in the mountains. So let's speculate wildly. Give me a speculation that you like.
Yeah. So this is credit to Paul Axing, Polly over on TikTok, who I feel like I saw anyway, that Fig's big choice at the end of this episode, the accepting her power within her, is Galir related because it's the like yogurt, like a curdled lemon like in her stomach or whatever, which has to be Galir, right?
Yeah, it's gotta be.
But Polly's, my favorite thing that I heard was, because I saw a bunch of people that were like, it's gonna be, whatever. So Polly's theory, and I love this, was that Galir either becomes Fig's patron because she believes in him so much it gives him the power to like give to her, or she becomes a warlock patron for Galir because she's an archdevil, and Galir then gets levels up and gets like powers this season.
Finally,
yes, and I love both of those things so much.
That is amazing. That is an amazing theory. I love it. Yeah, the predominant theory is of course the Galir connection because of the yogurt, and we all accept it. And is a very likely theory. I'm going to speculate more wildly. I'm going to call some shots of this season. I'm going to call some shots. I am going to predict, even though it's a very small table, I'm going to predict this season of Fantasy High, we are going to see somebody show up from one of the live shows as a character played by the player from the live show.
Love that. Or I mean, I think you can include the 7 in there as well,
or the 7, or probably not Pirates of the Leviathan.
Probably not Pirate. I mean,
I'm not saying that couldn't happen, but if I was to rank it, the 7, the live shows, but someone else that's Spire, but specifically that has been played, that the player comes back, sits at the table, and enjoys it. That's my speculation, wildly, especially because this is a big celebration of the thing that kicked it all off for Dimension 20, right? And so that's my wild speculation. I need another one from you, Jordan. What else can you wildly speculate or predict?
Ooh, we'll just do like full call shot. I say PC death this season. Even though they have the Revivify spell, I think if senior year happens, not everybody's there.
PC death. Do you have an idea on who it would be?
I mean, I want to say Fig, because Emily seems to feels like that story. I mean, in her behind the scenes, she said she wanted to retire Fig and give her a happy ending, and obviously teenage death would not be a happy ending. But maybe I'll adjust it. Teenage death is probably too much for a season. Someone's leaving that's not going to come back. Not dead.
Someone's moving. Someone's moving to Cleveland, and the rest of them are all in Cincinnati.
Yeah, if I had my guesses, I'm gonna say Fig leaves Elmville for maybe the Hells.
Maybe the Hells, but so I like that prediction. I'm gonna put I think the safe money, based off of past behavior of player characters, is actually Siobhan. Siobhan loves to put down a character when they're done with them, whether it's just resolved or they move on to another character. And I love to see that. So my safe money is Siobhan. If we want to break everyone's heart, though, it's Gorgug, and it is something very sad. We just hurt Zach's feelings. But yeah,
I'll throw another one your way. I think we'll get another Brennan stabs Lou in the back with a trusted NPC, because that is Brennan's favorite move in all of actual play.
It is, and it works works every time, and it works for the audience every time too. Lou is the best person for Brennan to rile up into an emotional fever. And
just to be clear, a literal stab, not a figurative.
Yeah,
a literal stab
physical stab. And it's very, very good. I'm gonna come in a little bit intense here, and I'm gonna say that we're going to, this is Fig related specifically. I think Fig and Ida are gonna break up because they can't make it work. And I think that's going to make all of the Dimension 20 fandom
be upset,
very heartbroken. But it's going to be excellent. Emily's probably going to cry, even though she doesn't cry on camera ever. She's going to cry. That's a deep callback to early NADPod. But I think that they're going to hit with that. This is what long distance, even with magic, is like, people and different things. Maybe that would be the reason Fig would move on, is that they're like, I can't sustain this, so I'm going to go pursue this for me personally. But I think they're going to have a big breakup, and I think that's the one that they all know would hit the fan base hardest. So that's the
people are going to be so angry at you for even suggesting it. And then if it happens, they're going to blame you, even though they shot this 8 months ago.
You know what? You should always be blaming people that look like me. It's always our fault. It's always our fault. Do you think we've even brushed across the arcing big bad of the season? Because I don't think it's the Night Orb. I think that's wrapping up next episode. Do you think we've interfaced at all with the big bad of this season?
So you're asking me, do I think it's Chungle Down Bim?
I mean, do you think it's Chungle Down Bim?
I think he has to come back.
He has to come back. I don't know. Is he the big bad, or does he become their most trusted, dependable ally after successfully shaking Fabian's mouth? Because he's got to complete that oath. But then once that's done, debts are paid.
Yeah, I saw somebody talking about it recently that in the Nightmare Forest, the only thing that was imagined for Lou was the sexy, or for Fabian was the sexy rats. That meant Chungle Down Bim was really there and then like gave up and left, which means he is roaming the earth somewhere, which is fantastic.
That's canon.
Yeah, oh boy, I feel like. See, I'm torn here because I don't think it's going to be Chungle Down Bim because that's too silly. Although it would be wonderful.
How fucking amazing! What a swing!
Whatever Brennan is going to do would be fantastic.
But
and like, so I'm torn between like someone they know, like an Arthur Eggfort loses his mind and becomes the big bad. I don't think that's probably true. I would guess it is. I'm gonna say big bad for the season, someone we haven't met yet. It's gonna be my.
I also, because I've spent a lot of time trying to think out, and having rewatched season 1 and 2 and the 7 and Pirates of Leviathan recently. I'm like, I don't know who it would be that wouldn't feel forced. But I feel like it's a really good idea regardless. So I feel like if it is someone that we've brushed across previously, or that has been part of Fantasy High or previously, it's gonna be someone that like I've made the mistake on not considering that person as a potential and everything. I don't think that it would be forced to do it, but I can't come up with anything. And I think that, but I also feel like from a story point of view, it almost feels like the strength of it would be either the strength of it because they don't have a guaranteed season 3 or senior year kind of thing would be pulling someone from season 1 or season 2 and being like, or the 7 and being like, it's this person, right? Or something related to something that was done, right? Especially because they did that follow-up bit.
It always could be Baron's Stark father, so always a possibility. Baron is also still out there in the
Baron's
world.
out there in the world. Cut from the 7. Baron is out there in the Baronies.
Yeah, Baron and Chungle Down Bim team up. It's just everyone that hates the bad kids the most form a Sinister Six to go after.
So
them.
You bring up Sinister Six, and it does bring me to the fact that they haven't really done. This is the other social group, and they're like the bad version of you, or like the good version, and that might be a play that they could do. They've never really done like an adversarial, good adventurers, I guess, group, and that could be a thing. It's tough because Night Yorb is about sewing up something and setting up a lot of that. Next episode will give us a lot more meat on the bone about what the season's probably gonna feel like for most of the season as far as plot wise. But yeah, I am super excited for it. It was good. It was a good show, a good episode. It was a great banger of a romp of a time to bring back the bad kids this way, and I'm really happy about it. Even if we've potentially lost Squeem and Balthazar's evil shadow is out there somewhere. Maybe it's Balthazar. Wild. How wild would that be if they just were like, this bit, it's the shadow of him, and it's he's the bad guy.
Yeah. And then he has the powers of the Night Yorb now because Fig saved him from the Night Yorb's clutches.
But yeah, nonetheless, I think we've got. I mean, no one's surprised that Fantasy High's back, and everybody's very excited. I've announced, and I've said this socially online. I love Fantasy High to death. It started it all. It's not my favorite season. It's not like my top 3 seasons, even though we're starting from gold and working our way up, right? When it comes to Dimension 20, but I was not prepared for how enthusiastically excited, like how charged I was to sit and watch it. And I was like, wow, they got me 100% for this.
Yeah.
If you had to, and I haven't asked you this in advance, so feel free to panic and I'll cut to the appropriate version. If you felt like someone in the TikTok community, in the Dimension 20 Dropout fan base, was someone that other people in the TikTok community, since you are so very plugged into, should be following, who should it be? Who should our feature friend of the day?
Oh no, I don't have my phone in front of me and I don't know anyone's usernames. I mean, obviously they should be following Dying of Exposure. That's a given.
Boo. I mean, yeah. Wait, no. I want people to watch these YouTube videos. Yeah.
Look, I gave a shout out to Paul Axing already. Polaxing, like fantastic creator. Very fun, very funny, British. So that's always a solid stretch.
It's a plus.
Yeah. Also, apologies if Polly, you're not British.
And we're just being very American about it.
Yeah.
Are you British?
If you're like, actually.
What are you, British? I'm from Indiana. What?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, okay. So Paul Axon, do follow them. Their social medias will be in the downstairs. Thank you again to all the artists that said yes and allowed us to put there. Make sure to go to Jordan's Patreon and find banger interview after banger interview after banger interview.
Yeah.
And
I got such a list building for junior year.
You have such a list. And you got lists for junior year. You got lists for other Dropout properties, which let's not pretend that almost everyone that watches Dimension 20 doesn't watch all of the rest of Dropout, because we all kind of do. Yes. But the most important thing, though, and my shout out is, if you haven't listened to it yet and you like who Jordan interviews and you like Dropout content, this is for the audience, but maybe for you too, Jordan, if you didn't know this. The next arc of Rotating Heroes, which is Jasper and Zach Oyama's actual play, will include, as its rotating players, because it's always now Jasper and Zach, Rashawn and Vic. So if you like the people that Jordan tends to interview and you think that you would like to listen to them play more tabletop or some tabletop for the first time, according to Jasper and Zach, Vic sounds like an absolute pro, which is no surprise to anyone.
Yeah, not the first time Vic played, but it's the first time Vic recorded an actual play. So,
and so do listen to that, or do check that out. You can listen to it where all good pods are found. And of course they also have another Patreon, but just stack on some of that Dropout Dimension 20 family onto the old wallet pocketbook there. But nonetheless, I've been Steve. This has been Jordan. You've been amazing for watching us. If you still are, thank you. Remember to do the buttons with the following and everything. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
See you in the stars.